Hello and welcome. I am Angela from Angela and Then Some. Today we are going to be discussing dreams. Today's topics are the dreams, the subconscious, and the soul. So across time and cultures, dreams have been called everything from messages from the gods to, mental housekeeping. But what if they're both science and soul? Everything, everywhere, all at once. So I put a pinned chat just so when you first get here, or if you're watching this live after the fact, what do you think? Are dreams, do they mean anything? Or are they simply your brain just doing what a brain does, or maybe a little bit of both? So as I just warm you guys up, how is everybody doing? Um, if you're new here, I'm Angela. Sorry, I started with like the topic and everything a little bit, but I'm Angela from Angela and Then Some. I'm just a lady who likes to talk about the big things and the little things in like a safe, judgment-free space for us to actually discuss it and learn and grow together and from one another. So yeah, let's get into that. Me personally, when it comes to do I think dreams have meaning or they're just brain activity or a little bit of both? I'm more on the side of they're clearly more or less they're both. I think dreams do have a lot of soul meaning, subconscious meaning, um, you know, maybe even some ancestral meaning when you dig deeper in there if you're more spiritual in that sense, or maybe even if you're not, there are things that just flew right by you because you're like, I don't know what that meant. It was weird, and then you just let it go. But then also I do agree with the whole aspect of their brain activity, your mind, mental housekeeping, so to speak, is trying to process things you saw that day, emotions you experienced, and things like that. So let me know in the chat what you think, and let me know also in the comments, depending on when you're watching this. Let me know, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. Moving along, we're going to be discussing psychology and the subconscious first. Like, what does science, in that I don't know, science in that respect, what do they say, and what does it seem most likely is occurring, or at least as far as science can uh, figure out? So, one of the first people who started studying dreams, that is a known psychologist in psychology as well as science, is Freud. Sigmund Freud, he was, I think, Austrian. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not quite sure. I'm not an expert on Freud. I honestly don't take I learned a lot of his stuff back in my psychology days in college, but I never went past that for me personally. He didn't ring my bell. But he made a point to say, dreams are more so wish fulfillment. If you dream of being on stage in a dream or getting applause, then maybe that is what you want. Maybe not literally on stage, but somewhere you wish to have that validation and things like that. So his idea was pretty much that. Yeah, if you're familiar with Freud, you can give some insights in the chat. But essentially, that's what Freud thought about the dreams and the subconscious, that they were essentially more so brain activity tied to your conscious mind, but also linked to your subconscious, meaning things that just haven't made their way to your conscious thoughts and things you act on. He also, I think, in my own personal theory about Freud, is that he was definitely, he was onto something for sure, but he was definitely a product of his time, considering how he framed his research when it came to dreams with the subconscious, psychoanalyzing people, as he was definitely a product of his time, like the Victorian era. That idea of people being, what's it called, like not being able to express themselves fully in things and being restricted. So a lot of his psychoanalysis, as well as like dream interpretation, those things uh, were very much still bricked into a certain mold. Hello, Danielle. She thinks a bit of both. I need all the help I can get from my subconscious. Yes. For some of us on that journey, if you're looking to just be generally more introspective, or you're trying to like dig deep and really get into like childhood trauma, or figure out who you are in life, yeah, sometimes every little bit helps. So if your mind already figured out a puzzle or is figuring something out, you're like, yeah, tell me about it. So I totally get that. I think that's where Carl Jung, he was a German psychologist, came in. I talked about him before in other lives. Him and Freud, he was under Freud as like a mentee. But at a certain point, they separated in what their beliefs were, as Freud, like I said, was more so a product of his time, in my opinion. So his psychoanalysis, as well as dream interpretation and subconscious look into the human mind and the subconscious, was restricted. He pretty much wouldn't fathom other things like soul work or ancestral dreams or archetypes and things like that. Like it was more like he just did not. He was maybe not there on his own personal journey to open his mind to be like maybe. Or Carl Jung was definitely there on his journey, and he proposed that dreams were a sort of soul language. I know all of us have probably are familiar with archetypes, maybe in movies or in storytelling, or even like if you watch particular shows, you kind of know the beats a show goes, where you're like, oh, this is the main character, this is the hero, this is the heroine, oh, this must be the bad guy, the villain. Those are archetypes. Carl Jung proposed that our mind, since over so many people that he I want to use the term psychoanalyzed, but he, studied, if that's the correct term, he studied the people. Uh, he found a lot of different like dreams and subconscious, what he labeled as archetypes that would pop up, people that would easily fit archetypes like imagery as well, like the hero, the heroine, wise old man. I think there was also like, oh, it escapes me right now. But if you're familiar, let me know in the chat if you're familiar with archetypes. But there were things that he noticed that over culturally and things that in different cultures and societies, there were similar archetypes. And I think even in his own psychology, like I have books on his, I do need to read. I have not gotten there yet. He discusses those archetypes more thoroughly, and I have not gotten there. That's a me problem. But he also went into like shadow work, where your subconscious and your subconscious tends to show up in your dreams, that maybe when you're being chased by like a scary stalker in a dream or thing that you're scared of, it's not a literal fear. Freud would say it's a literal fear. Maybe you're scared of the dark. Maybe you're, scared of encountering some unknown assailant, which legit, that was Freud's bag, and that would make sense. Like for some people, yeah, and also kind of like, yo, duh, like of course, But Carl Jung looked more deeply into it to be like it may not be a literal fear in the sense of an overwhelming dread in your life, but maybe something of what he decided like the shadow archetype or the shadow part of you, which I discussed this, I think, in last week's self-sabotage discussion. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. But he discussed it as the shadow side, not necessarily the bad part of you, but more so the things that either society, friends, family, or even yourself have felt guilt about or shamed of, and then kind of pushed it aside into you. So it may not be necessarily a bad thing. It could be a relatively good thing, but maybe where you grew up or who you grew up with or society in general, your culture you grew up in kind of made it a negative. So you kind of pushed it down, but things like that may show up in your subconscious, in your dreams. Same being chased by an unknown assailant, looking in the mirror and not seeing a face you recognize. That could be your shadow self attempting to reemerge. And in Carl Jung's studies, he framed it as sometimes the more forceful the shadow seems to uh, make itself known, like say in a dream where the assailant is like super scary or it's getting bigger, it's kind of the shadow self trying to assert itself that it is there, and maybe it is in your best interest to confront it. And that's also what I think people say about like confronting your fears and facing your fears, because if you don't, then they get bigger and it becomes even worse. So it's kind of like Carl Jung, mind you, was all about integration of the soul. So it was confronting your shadow self, because in his belief was that shadows can't exist in the light. So you need to bring these things to light. So, the smaller the shadow is, the more it doesn't exist in that regard, and then integrate it into who you are. So maybe things that you thought were negative, maybe they're not fully negative. I think I discussed this briefly last time, where I said maybe if you were naturally more of an aggressive child and people were like, okay, that's a bad tendency to have. So they're like, don't do this. Don't, push that emotion down, or don't react that way. But if someone would have said, you're aggressive, that's okay. let's put you in a sport, let's put you in competition stuff, like even if it's chess, put that brain power or the physical power, depending on how you were best at expressing that. So it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And also, I discussed this with my husband one time. I said, like, when I was like studying for the live, I mentioned that it's also, in society, someone being more aggressive is not necessarily a bad thing. Consider cultural, tribal, things like that, smaller communities. You kind of need the person who's willing to go punch someone in the face sometimes, or, willing to be like, I'll punch somebody and I'm willing to get punched back. Like sometimes you need the, like, say the a-hole in the group. Sometimes you need that guy, uh, especially if they're well integrated and they know who they are, they know their boundaries and know their values and know why they're like protecting people and what value or boundaries being crossed and why they need to stand up. So sometimes things like aggression or being aggressive is not necessarily a bad thing. On a personal note, that's also something my daughter, she's currently a child, and that's a hoot when they say some weird stuff. She told me that one time. She said, I'm an aggressive child. And I was like, okay. She said the term aggressive. And, I never, don't think I use that in daily speak, like my daily day to day speech. So then I asked her, what do you mean by, like, does someone, just approaching it to make sure no one was telling her that, hey, you're kind of aggressive or making it a negative, just, keeping that line of communication open. And she said, no, I just thought of it myself. I'm like, okay, you know who you are as a person, props to you. Dennis states, protectors and hunters are great as long as they aren't insane. Yes, as long as they aren't insane, as long as they know their boundaries, they know their values, they know who they're trying to protect. And I think it's about knowing your why, like what you're doing and all that. So yeah, very interesting. And then I think when it comes to dreams and the subconscious, modern science has went into the aspect of what can be, legit studied in the sense of, or the EKG machines, if that's the correct term. I don't know, but like the electric nodes. Yeah, I'm just gonna call it that. Things like that, and being attached to people where they can actually read when they're in REM sleep, which is like when your mind is actually dreaming and doing all the fun processing stuff where you're like your body is down, but your mind is going. They've learned that that's when you're dreaming, you tend to be doing emotional processing. And then also like dreams, it's really interesting to note that they said when you're in a dream state, it's I can't remember the study or what they actually said, but it was the reason why sometimes dreams are so intense is because they have to reach a certain emotional threshold for you to take notice and for you to process. So that's why a lot of times in dreams, if you're not aware you're dreaming, for those of us who aren't frequent lucid dreamers, that could be something that you have dreams that startle you awake or kind of stay with you because it made you extremely uncomfortable. I think as there are dreams and dream symbolism that we're going to get into that definitely can affect people and make you remember the dream, which is also why your mind is probably like saying, hey, take notice. We're showing you some stuff that you find disturbing for a reason. But yeah. So, Chat, have you ever had a dream that made you realize something about yourself? Since we're speaking in the sense of Freud, the literal sense of wish fulfillment, Carl Jung and dream as a soul language, archetypes, shadow work, and then the modern sense, modern science of it, of emotional processing, maybe even some problem solving, and then like memory processes like cleanup and so forth. I personally Oh, Dennis stated, I've never been lucid in a dream. I believe the others have. I'm totally jealous though. Yeah, I've experienced lucid dreaming before. That's a thing for me. It's not something I practice normally, but it has occurred. And when it's occurred, I'm like, woo. One time I fell through a window because I didn't know what I was doing. So that was a fun, like, just tipping over. Um, and then like I asked if you ever had a dream that made you realize something about yourself. For me personally, not particularly about myself, but there was a problem solving connection, I guess. So modern science at play in my real life of saying like, yes, that resonated with me. Resonated, but hey, that's the word term to use right now. Um, it said like, dreams have helped people, solve their problems and things like that. Like if you're playing a video game or something a lot, you may see that in your dream. And when I would think maybe a child, I was somewhere maybe 10 or 11, I remember playing, I want to say Donkey Kong, but it was like Mario Donkey Kong. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with that one. Where, well, it might have been Donkey Kong then, like the OG Donkey Kong, like Game Boy Donkey Kong, where he stole your girl, I guess, and then you have to get platforms, and then you have to like connect bridges or get in, like, I don't know. I it's it's in there as a memory, but it's a little fuzzy. A long time ago, and then I played that game a lot, maybe that day or a few weeks probably. I was like really into it. I remember going to bed and dozing off to sleep, and yes, I was seeing the game imagery of like the last level that I had played a few times 'cause I was stuck at it. And in my dream, I seen the game being played, and then pretty much showed me, oh, and then that moves that. Oh, I should move this first, and then it will open. And so that's how, problem solving in dreams, that was totally a thing for me. I don't know if anybody else has played games that much, but for me personally, yeah. And then also dreams making you realize things about yourself. I personally have been kind of into my dreams lately. I've been looking in more to Carl Jung and doing shadow work and figuring out who I am as a person and what are all the things maybe I was supposed to be, if that's the right word to term to use for that. So yeah, I've been doing that, and I hope you guys, if you're interested in doing that, go for it. So speaking of dreams, when it comes to those that have emotional response, the ones that if you're not that in tune with your emotions or what your subconscious is doing in your dreams, well, even if you are, there are some, I guess, messages more or less that to use, the term to use, that your mind, your dreams and subconscious would use symbolism. And I think that's one of those is that there are a lot of common dreams. I think if anybody has any interest or has looked into like dream dictionaries, you can buy one and just there's a lot of dreams that have pretty not vague but pretty decent symbolism and why you may dreaming it why you may be dreaming it. Excuse me. One of those is like a lot of people, one of the common dreams like teeth falling out. I think there's like when your brakes on your car don't work or something, or like you can't drive, or even if someone else is driving and you're not, that can be like a lack of control in your life. And like brakes not working could also be like you feel out of control or there's a lack of control in some aspect. The same with the teeth falling out. It could be a vanity thing where you're concerned about some part of how you look, or it can be a health related thing where somewhere in your subconscious or maybe even in your conscious could be something that you are well aware of, but is still leaking, like something that you're not fully handling or something you have to wait about. So that could be health related. And then I think there's other ones when people dream about water or being like submerged or water being around water tends to symbolize emotion and things like that. So if you're submerged and you're having a bad time, it may be that you're being overwhelmed with some like strong emotion. And then if you like rise above it or come out of it or are having a good time, it may be a part of like you're enjoying the water. Maybe you're integrating some emotional aspects of yourself that you hadn't before. And so some of the symbolism can be like, even if you're just barely, dipping your toe in it and getting like a dream dictionary, either go online and look them up or buy a book for yourself, can give you some insight of maybe what's at the surface level or what resonates with you of like, oh, that is happening right now. That makes sense. Um, so speaking of the soul and spiritual symbolism, a lot of cultures, including like ancient cultures and modern traditions and stuff like that, see dreams as portals. Does anybody else here think the dreams are kind of like a key into the subconscious or even further than just an individual's mind? Do anybody in the chat think they could be more than that? Like some people think of ancestral messages can get through. Those who have passed away can talk to um, those still in the living realm in their dreams. And then I think some people, even like in Christianity, I think probably Islam and other religious cultures, talk about getting divine messages or prophetic dreams. I know in the Bible that happens a lot where people, God speaks to them in dreams. And then also, yeah, so those are considered divine messages or like maybe sometimes dreams and the subconscious kind of go into like the level of trance state where people either go on, I think there's, some reason I'm just thinking of peyote. Like that's the only trance-inducing thing I could think of. But I know maybe in some Mexican cultures or Native American cultures there were the trance states of like when you were gonna go through some level of initiation of, I guess, growth or processing. Correct me if I'm wrong, or add it in the chat your 2 cents, or even in the live if you're rewatching this. Please comment. I love the comments. But yeah, so there's a lot of different ideas surrounding the soul and the spirit concerning dreams and the subconscious symbolism. Then it states, my father swears he's had people visit him in dreams, only to find out the next morning that they had passed in the last day or so. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. I personally have had dreams of people who had passed away, and they were actually like sending me messages. They're very interesting, where I'm just like, oh, hello. Like it doesn't make sense, but then it does make sense when you kind of connect the symbolism dots, and then they tell you something that actually is like, oh, that's kind of helpful. Thank you. um, so yeah, there's like divine messages. If you look at it like the religious aspect, things like astral visits. I guess if it's what your dentist, if it's what your father remembers seeing if someone passed away, it'd be like their spirit reaching out to the people that maybe either meant something to them or just felt like sending them a quick goodbye, especially if they hadn't talked to them in a while or a long time, but they did have like some connection to them, which is kind of like a nice like, oh, thanks. Um, Danielle states, I had one dream where I was told about something, and when I brought it up to the person in real life, they told me it was true. I was being chased by a monster when I confronted it, and I was given the info. Yeah, it could be considered a divine message, or guidance or higher self message. The higher self, a lot of people explain, it's more in the new age and reincarnation, those type of circles of that you know more than you know, than you think you know, because I think there's a metaphor analogy. I still have not looked up the difference to confirm what's the difference between a metaphor and analogy, which that is on me. One of the little Angela quirks, which is I don't know what this is. I've never looked it up in the years every time it pops up, but it was like imagine your body is essentially like a radio. This is the hardware. Um, The radio is the hardware, but obviously messages come through the radio. Someone's talking on the other end, be it music, be it actual like news, be it someone just like a CB radio. You can imagine it that way too. But maybe that voice is you, like me talking right now. I'm in a physical body. This is the hardware. We are talking, enjoying ourselves, all that good stuff. But like, where does it come from? Like people, I think even scientists wonder, like, where does consciousness originate? Even in the womb, when does consciousness actually occur and things like that. Um, but it was saying like, so if you were to break open the radio, not don't break open a person, break open the radio, would you expect to see a little man in there controlling it, speaking? No, it ends up because the science is that radio waves and that dude, the person's voice you're hearing is somewhere else. So essentially, the human body, in some this metaphor that I picked up somewhere is essentially that way, where you are the radio picking up the frequency and the message, and that's your consciousness is you, but its origins are elsewhere. And I think I've heard that, and like Michael Newton's Live Between Lives, where he kind of talks about reincarnation. He talks about people he actually did like past life regressions, as well as what happened when they die and all that stuff, like their soul. And that's what they mentioned, that you're essentially in those books. It mentions that your soul, your seat of your consciousness, is your head, but it's really like I guess like consider like a wire, but not really a wire. It's spiritual spirit and everything connection that goes to elsewhere. And so when the hardware breaks down, either old age, accidents, trauma, things like that, you just you get taken back out and return to your original spiritual form. That's just in the new age interpretation of things. Um, so in that, do we think, or do you think, because I'm not here to tell you what to think, we're here to discuss it and figure it out, or get close to our own truth and find our own boundaries, find our own value systems, entertain the ideas. Do you think dreams come from a higher source, or are they just reflections of our mind? I guess that goes back to my original. Do you think dreams have any meaning, or are they just like your internal, your brain internally processing stuff? Like the hardware needs to do with it, CC cleanup. Sometimes I think that's what's called. I'm not the tech person, and so that is just the hardware clearing the software. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I'm not a tech person, but I hope you get that metaphor slash analogy. And if you know the difference between metaphor slash analogy, let me know in the chat. I would love to know, because then that means it's off my plate and I don't have to Google this now. But yeah, um, do you think dreams come from a higher source, or are they just reflections of our mind? And I think, like I said earlier, I think they're both. I think it very easily could be just a reflection of your mind. Like if you're legit scared of something and you experienced it that day, it may show up in your dream because you are processing the reality of your life. Those things are occurring. The brain needs to clean up things and stuff like that. But I also think dreams do come from a higher source, either an integrated source as yourself, things that you picked up on that maybe you weren't consciously aware you picked up on, but you did, and your mind is processing those. Danielle states, I don't think any energy is wasted, so it's probably got multiple purposes all in one. Yeah, I think I agree. I think our system is pretty adaptable. It's probably doing a lot more than a lot of people realize concerning the science. I don't think the science has caught up to the physical, or like to be optimal. I don't think the science is there yet, but also to the spiritual for sure has not caught up to measuring all that. And I think also the minds of a lot of people haven't caught up to being like, was it the little commercial with the litate girl with the tacos where it's like, why not both? Like just let's let's do both of these studies, or do both of these studies, compare, do it properly, do all the variables and all that good stuff. But yeah, so yeah, I think definitely like either subconscious in the sense that your conscious mind picked up on a lot more stuff than you realized you did, but then also from a higher source, be it God, be it the universe, be it the divine feminine, whatever you kind of believe is the higher source, could be sending you messages, and that at some points, I don't think continuously, but can send you a message or something that either can help your life, or it's helping some grander picture, and giving you some imagery or something to hold on to, because like hope and faith and stuff. Danielle states for sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's actually a very interesting thing to kind of entertain both of those ideas and play with those. But hmm, I had a question, but then what do you think is weirder? That our brain creates whole worlds every night, or that we forget most of them? I know for a lot of us, if you're not used to like writing down your dreams, like in a dream journal, or remembering them or trying to interpret them, once, say, like the first hour of waking up, if it was there, it is gone. And sometimes I've woken up like at 4 in the morning thinking, whoa, that was a very thorough dream. Like just recently, I had a dream where there was two people. The woman's name was Rita. She was like a middle-aged woman. And then another guy who was like a taller guy, kind of on the husky side, named Bobby. And I'm like, man, I gave them names and everything. And I was just like, good luck, everybody else. But waking up from that dream, I was like, oh my gosh, they had names and stuff. So I kind of think that's important. And it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. So I was like, yeah, I'll remember. I think I did remember like at 7 in the morning when I woke up for like about 5 minutes. But then the real world stuff happened. I had to like deal with some fraud stuff on a real note in the reality of the world. Yeah. So I had to get on customer service and do stuff like that. And then also get my daughter ready for school. So then it left. But then once I was back home and finally having my breakfast, which is normally a protein shake, FYI, I was sitting there, and then I was like, I call it like a taste. I don't know if anybody else experiences this. Let me know. When there is a memory or something you forgot, like say like a dream, I don't think of it. It feels like a little fuzzy neuron in my brain, but I feel like I'm tasting something, like, ooh, there was something I experienced and it was there. Kind of like if you're trying to remember, like, I ate this chocolate cake. What does chocolate cake taste like? But you're like, I can't remember the flavor. But it's like I feel like the memory is a taste. That's just a weird my Angela brain, I guess. And but then when I started thinking about it more and I was trying to remember little pieces of the dream started coming back, and then I remembered their names and then more things like that. And then that's when I was able to look them up. Jenna states, I'm terrible at remembering dreams. Yeah. Some people are, but it's more so you got to practice. It's like a lot of things in life. It's all about practice and getting used to it. So when you do remember a dream, maybe get the dream journal, write it down, voice message it to yourself, or or speech to text it, whatever works. And then maybe slowly but surely it'll get better, as well as with your conscious effort of being like, I want to remember. I think that's one of the things of lucid dreaming. Side note is that one of the ways people, from what I read many years ago, I got into like lucid dreaming when I was like 8 or 9. I was like, what is that? Because I'm a millennial. The internet started being a thing around 9 years old for me, and we had a computer in our house. So anytime something came up, and I was like, "What is that? Let me look it up." I was very curious, and I'm like, "Let's do this." And part of that was like lucid dreaming, as I had already had experienced things like that, where I woke up in the middle of the night, but I was still very much asleep, and then I, was touching the wall, seeing a glow around my hand, and being like, "Whoa, what is this?" So watching movies and things like that, I was able to connect some dots and be like, that's what that is. Danielle states, my dream remembering are hit and miss. Yeah, that's a thing. But it's also part of like not remembering your dreams. They're also like, I think sometimes, and I think in the new age interpretation of things, it's kind of like when they use the term spirit in that regard. Mind you, if you believe in God, if you believe in the divine feminine or the universe, whatever, that is totally cool. I'm just going to use the term spirit. That spirit, although may reveal things to you subconsciously, that they're not meant for you to know yet or now, or the work is being done internally. So you don't have to consciously be doing the work. But then sometimes spirit is like, yes, or God or whatever you believe in, is like, yes, you should know this, or it's no problem for you to know this. And I think that goes into the Michael Newton's reincarnation thing, where he talked about is that sometimes, even when numerous times actually, he did like over 1,400 or like regressions and hypnotherapy sessions to do all this in his studies, was that sometimes the spirit itself, the person talking, would say, I can't talk about that, or that's not for you to know. So either it was more on the personal level, or it's also he would try to figure out how the other world, that reincarnation, that spirit realm works. And then they were told, like, the person would get more of a, he's like a solemn voice, or like, sorry, I can't talk about that. And then, or get, he said, invasive, not invasive, evasive, and try to, maneuver the conversation. So he knew, okay, so I can't push that button. Like and he described it as either they're not supposed to know, or he himself, as on his own journey, shouldn't know that, which he was like, fair, that makes sense. I forgot what tangent that came from. Oh, I remember. Thank you, Danielle. Your previous comment jogged the memory. So yeah, so sometimes I think God, the divine, the universe, what have you, sometimes you don't remember things because you don't need to remember things. Like the subconscious mind, the spirit, whatever is going on, either legit, even like in trauma realms, when people don't remember certain things, um, but maybe they start processing stuff, and maybe they go through a therapy session. They're like, I don't even remember like this Christmas. I barely remembered it. But then when they asked me about something, I just started crying, and I still can't remember it. But the crying is what their body, their system needed to, and that was the release. So even if they fully can't remember what memories were tied to those, neurons, or that trauma, good or bad, or whatever, no, good trauma, that trauma or that memory, whatever, good or bad, the release was what was needed. It's the physical action of crying. The mental block was released, or like if you think of it as a dam, like the dam was broken down or something. So it's things like, even when it comes to like modern science and what we understand about trauma in the brain, sometimes you don't need to fully remember something to process it. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, but I actually love it. I love when I am let me know in the comments how your dreams are. Like, are your dreams vivid? Are they kind of shallow? You don't remember them most of the time, but the ones you have remembered, are they pretty thorough? Danielle states, you know what? If I had to say, I think I'm not supposed to know. Like, it'll change my journey too much from what I'm here to experience. And Victoria states, I was dreaming about giving a kiss and woke up because my lips were still in kiss mode. Yeah. I guess you're because normally I think in the modern science of it in dreams when you go into REM sleep, um, they actually say like all these chemicals are kind of like hormones and chemicals going through your body to make your physical body not move. Because like in dreams, you can be fighting, you could be running, you could be jumping, and they don't, your body doesn't want you to actually be doing all that during that process. Not only would it be exhausting because you're trying to, recharge and like rest, but also you get hurt and all that stuff. So that's very interesting, Victoria. Yeah. Uh, Remind people not to share a bed with you, I guess. But yeah, yeah, that's actually was really funny. Thank you. So yeah, for me personally, when I have dreams, I have very vivid dreams. I have not kept a dream journal, and that's something that I feel spirit, the universe, the divine God, it's kind of telling me, hey, write this stuff down so you can reflect fully. I do have sometimes I do speak to text because I've always had an issue where I tend to talk really fast, and I apologize when I get into my own little mode. I'm like, oh, let's go. Victoria says, I'm kissing. Yeah. Sometimes when I get into my mode, so I apologize if I talk really fast. Let me know in the comments and the live right now, or if you're watching this at a later time, let me know in the comments if I go a little too fast sometimes. But I'm very passionate. I get excited. And I think that's also something with finding my voice and the anxiety was a lot of the times I had speech problems as a child, or they assumed I had speech problems. Either A, I was very quiet, like mumble mouth when I was talking because I was more on the quiet, shy side, anxious side, or I would start talking very fast. Words would start slurring together, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this child can't speak properly." But yeah, so I've always had very vivid dreams. Sometimes they're very story arc, like this is a whole world my mind came up with apparently. And sometimes I've thought, "Ooh, this would be a great book," but So let me know in the comments or in the chat. Have you ever had a dream that was very like storytelling, long, like, oh dang, this is a whole world in here? Danielle State, you got to get a recorder beside just for your bedside, just for your dreams. Yeah, I've thought of that, but then I'd have to talk, and then sometimes with my husband next to me, I don't want to just be talking. I think he'd be pretty just like, what are you doing? And then just be like, okay, because he's a very like reasonably heavy sleeper in that regard. So maybe that's something I should do. But yeah, so yeah, my dreams have a very vivid and very building building whole worlds here. And speaking of those who maybe experience very vivid dreams or whole worlds or um, an interesting story or two, do you think any of this a dream could be not just a dream? It's not just your subconscious; that it could actually be you. Maybe there are like new age interpretations of things where it's like maybe you're going into another realm, like either the spiritual realm that looks a certain way, so that's why things get a little funky. Victoria states, I have those dreams where things happen in real life, and days later I'm having some dream that goes with what happened to me in the real world. Yeah. Um, Pretty cool. When we're processing stuff and stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But do we think like sometimes, or have you experienced this where you feel like in a dream that it wasn't just a dream? Like maybe you spoke to somebody and maybe it felt like, did you really speak to them? And maybe if you know this person in real life, they were like, they have no recollection, or maybe in a weird way, they're like, I did have a weird dream with you in it. I don't remember what was said. And so you're like, oh my gosh, did we talk in a dream? So I think that's called in like ancient traditions, things like that. It's called like dream walking. I think there's a scene, and if you've seen it in it's a Marvel movie, Doctor Strange, something madness. I can't remember the thing, but with the Scarlet Witch, she does dream walking where she kind of goes into parallel her like dimensional world where she is in that person's body. I'm not sure if that's the literal interpretation of dream walking. Um, but people, I think when I briefly studied this and looked it up, where people actually recall like dream walking, where you are going into someone else's subconscious or in a meeting realm, like a spiritual place. I've had dreams like that, and I kind of forgot them, where it felt more like this wasn't like I said, I have very vivid dreams, and some of them go into things that don't make sense from my personal like Freudian lens. Like, why would you dream of all that? These people's characters in your dreams seem to have their own volition, their own will, doing their own side things, and you just happen to get a snippet of a conversation. You're like, okay, and you're like, I'm not talking to them though. So I've had dreams like that for sure that felt like more like a soul meeting place, or where I was meeting with beings outside of my own consciousness. Maybe they could have been archetypes or they could have been others, I suppose. But do you think you can meet someone's soul in a dream? Do you think that's possible? I do know, like, the CIA itself, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, like all the way up to like 2016, they did studies on like lucid dreaming, ESP, remote viewing, like legit studies, like continuously, where they were like, we're doing this. And they did do things with dreams where people would like they did simple stuff. Obviously, in the beginning, what is released and declassified. They did simple stuff like having the test subjects, being wired up to all the machines and whatnot. But once they entered REM sleep, they were like briefed beforehand, but they were told to there's another room like across the hall or on the other side of the wall, and we're gonna put an image in a card there. So when you go in your dream, go over there, look at the image in the card, and then when you wake up, tell us what it is and see if, I think there was a psychic, like a known psychic, I can't remember her name, and she actually did do it, but obviously that's like only one person. And she said when she woke up, they said, "What did you see in the card?" And she said, she didn't say she saw the card, but she said, "I dreamt of a movie," and she like the chariot race, and it was and she's like, "I read this book a long time ago, and it was Ben-Hur." That's the book she read, and then she said it was like that, and then the scene of the chariot race or something, and they're like, okay. And then when they opened the card, it was actually the picture of the movie still of the chariot race in Ben-Hur. So that was pretty interesting. But like I said, it was only one person, and she was a psychic. She was if it was going to be somebody, it would be someone who's exceptional at this task. But that's not enough to be like it's a proven thing. It had to be like more people studied it. So yeah. So do I think you can meet someone's soul in a dream? From those of us, like Dennis said, his father swears that a few people in his life have shown up after they had passed recently, like a day or two. I think so. I think when it comes to souls, that realm could be very timey-wimey where things overlap. And yeah, Danielle states, oh, oh, sorry. I was reading the second message before I got to the first one. Oh yeah, I've heard of that. One dream I walked into a world that had a totally different rules, like gravity orientation. So like with the ideas that our bodies are receivers, a soul might be able to send signal to multiple bodies in multiple worlds. Dreaming could be a window to these other lives. Yeah, I think people have said that about like dimensions and like things are less like layered. Yeah. So that goes into like symbols, archetypes, and reoccurring dreams. Like especially if you can like you dream of a certain world that you visited multiple times. Because usually people say like dreams are just, if there are just your subconscious doing its subconscious thing of just cleaning stuff out, maybe even a little bit of spiritual stuff going on. Considering that some people have visited places multiple times, it's kind of like their mind remembers. I think for me personally, one of the dreams I had that is familiar, I had it like decades ago at this point. I didn't even know the term for this. It was when I was like, I guess I could have been like 12 or 13. I was very young still. I was in what looked like a library that was kind of like run down a little bit, but it was very large, like one of the majestic large libraries. But it wasn't really run down in the sense of a negative. It was more just like integrated or interwoven with like plants and things were growing around it. And I remember like I was the librarian, and I told somebody who had visited the library, and I brought them down one of the many large aisles, and I gave them a book, and I told them, and I remember looking straight at them and explaining to them, I need you to concentrate and try to remember as much as you can, because once you wake up, a lot of this isn't going to be there still. Like you're not going to remember. And I opened the book, and it was someone else's life that they were looking for information. And I told them, I literally remember the words I told them. I said, this is a boy who has died in a war that hasn't begun. Pretty much past, present, future, it's all layered. So the person that we're looking at in the book is a child to them, like he is currently a child, but he's already passed, meaning he's already dead. So his spirit is also elsewhere, and the war that he does die in hasn't even started yet. But that's exactly what I remembered. And then when I read the Michael Noon's reincarnation book and started getting more into Carl Jung and all that stuff, I found out that library scenario, the books, is part of what's called Akashic Records, where people say that there's numerous other studies where people have seen these books, where you can open them and look at a timeline on Earth. You can look at someone's life. You can study it to learn why they did what they did, what happened that led to this, and stuff like that. And I never even knew what that was. And I'm like years, like decades later in my own life, and then there's been other books, instances, and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was a thing, and I just didn't have the term for it. And I think I had a conversation with my sister and another dream that had a book too, and she's the one who recalled that and said that term Akashic records, and I was like, what? So yeah, very interesting when these synchronicities, as Carl Jung would put it, when they connect, because he stated pretty much your life will seem like coincidences just keep happening until you integrate the shadow, because your subconscious mind is always leading your conscious mind to where it needs to go or where it should go, what it needs to see. And even, I guess, if you're fighting it, it may take longer on that journey. But until you make the shadow conscious, it will always be leading you around. So things that may be like the same relationship patterns, the same type of jobs, or the same people you meet and stuff like that, they may have certain patterns or loops because you're not paying enough attention to either solve the problem or to confront it or to figure out what this lesson, this template of a person is always trying to teach you. So that gets real interesting. Wow, that's gnarly. Yes, gnarly indeed. Um, yeah, symbols, archetypes, and recurring dreams. We all got the symbols like, like I mentioned earlier, flying. Did I mention flying earlier? I don't know. But flying, water, falling, those are usually more so either emotional metaphors or it can be bit about losing or about control and things like that. And then the reoccurring dreams, like I said, about Carl Jung going into integrating the shadow and bringing the subconscious conscious, because the shadow cannot be where you bring light to. So he used light as the term of bringing things to light and talking about them, bringing them to your conscious. The shadow gets much smaller, of course, and it becomes integrated. But it talks about that recurring dreams like that could be unresolved lessons or patterns in your life that just you aren't bringing to the forefront. My back is hurting a little bit on a real note, but we're doing it. We talked about lucid dreaming, um, which could be like a conscious connection to the unconscious realms for those who are familiar with lucid dreaming, as I briefly discussed those earlier. Yeah, when it comes to lucid dreaming, for those who either want to do that or even want to recall more of their dreams, one of those ways, I think even in like, I don't want to say new age, but more like mindset growth things. And in those regards, people have talked about before you go to sleep, kind of either repeat a certain mantra or a problem you're trying to solve. Because I think there is like an actual how-to of a way to do this where it was a study, like a legit normal, like science. I don't want to use the term normal, but a scientific study about it where they're like a method of you have an actual problem in your life that you're kind of stuck. Either I don't know what to do in my career, I don't know how to resolve this conflict with XYZ, or I don't know where I'm going to get the money for this. All this stuff is while you're going to sleep. One, that's the only problem you're going to concentrate on, not in conscious life, not like I'm going to make myself sit here and budget this money, or I'm going to make myself figure this out. It's like, make that the one thing you're actually trying to process in your life. So before bed, for like 3 or 4 nights in a row, consciously talk to yourself about it, but like let yourself relax, but be like, I would like to solve this problem. How can I do X, Y, Z? That's. So as that is like one of the last thoughts of your mind as you're slipping into unconsciousness, it gives your subconscious that window into your consciousness to actually help your consciousness guide your subconscious a little bit there. So that's one of those ways that people said, like even after like 6 or 8 weeks later, when they came back, there was noticeable improvement in the area of their life, either like solved or things had definitely got into motion than previously, like the previous 6 or 8 weeks where like nothing had happened. So yeah, for those who are interested in lucid dreaming, that's also one of the things, like a mantra you can say is like, I want to astral project or lucid dream tonight. I want to remember my dreams. That's also one. And I want to be able to understand them. That's also one of those things. Danielle says, oh, that's a good idea. I would like to try that. Yeah. So it talks about those little mantras and things depending on what you're trying to do. It helps send that message through instead of your subconscious doing like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. You can kind of give it a little nudge in a certain direction. Um, so chat, speaking of the dream symbols, archetypes, things like that, what dream symbols show up most for you? And what do you think they mean? For me personally, I know some archetypes have shown up. I've had a teeth falling out dream before, and that was definitely disturbing. I think it was at the time when I had braces because I just got braces like a few years ago, and so I had them for about 2 years, and maybe this past year no braces. So I think all that movement happening was an actual conscious health thing. I did end up taking like calcium and all that stuff to make sure I was helping the bone movement. But that was one of the dreams I had then because also the braces thing was also a little bit tied to vanity, to be honest. My teeth have always been crooked, and like I said, I always had problems public speaking or speaking out in general. And part of that was like when you don't look the way you want to look to present yourself the way you want to present. So that was part of that the affirmation of I want to look and appear as the person in my head. I want to look and appear, as capable, confident, all that good stuff when I speak. Victoria says, my teeth have fallen out. Symbols. Yeah. I hope you mean that in a dream. But no, no shame. And if your teeth actually have fallen out, that stuff is going to happen when it happens. More so if you don't take care of yourself, but, accidents also happen. So yeah, I think one of the other dreams that I've had frequently is like flying. I love a flying dream normally. Those are always fun, except when in my flying dreams, if I ever fly over just open water, like ocean open water, I don't like that. I've consciously been like, in a like a lot of my dreams are very vivid. Like I said, I tend to be pretty conscious that I'm dreaming a lot of the times. Like a good 85% of my dreams, I'm well aware I'm dreaming. I'm like just going with it. And then so a flying dream, I'm like, wee. But then when I have to go over the ocean, I'm like, dang it. I'm like, I don't like looking at this from this angle. What if I fall in there? So maybe that could be me being afraid of um, emotions and trying to rise above them and still having that fear of getting, deep into my own emotions or emotions around me. Victoria says maybe it's telling me to take care of myself. Maybe teeth falling out tends to be either tied to vanity or health. So definitely that. If you look up like the dream dictionary stuff, that is definitely something it could be trying to tell you. But you know you the best, so maybe meditate on it, pray about it if that's your jam. Write it down so you can do some self-reflection, ask yourself some questions. Um, So going further into like the science that we've studied, we know dreams happen during REM sleep. That's when the rapid eye movement. Duh. I thought like, what does REM stand for? And I think rapid. And I was like, what's the E stand for? I'm like, eye, rapid eye movement state, and that's when you can tell when someone's dreaming when all their eyes are going back and forth and moving. You're like, oh yeah, just like when you've seen probably a lot of us experience like a pet. And you see a dog laying on the ground taking his little nap and you see those little paws start kicking in his eyes or things twitching, you're like, oh, he's dreaming of something. So yeah. But do you think we'll ever be able to scientifically prove why we dream? Or is this something that's meant to stay a mystery? Like, do you think we'll be able to maybe even record dreams or even view them on a screen? Um, yeah, do you think I personally think at some point scientifically, we probably will be able to record dreams. We probably will be able to view it on the screen. Now, depending on how our society goes, that could be like a fun, oh, wow, this is awesome for you. You can learn so much. Or even a professional, yes, this is great. I'm going to actually process all this stuff, succinctly, compassionately, and get this, understand myself. Or it could be like a very dystopian, Futurama-esque, where there are literally ads in your dreams to buy products or you use this device to record your dreams for your own sake, and then suddenly like my device was hacked. These people know my dreams now, or something like that. Like, it's not just it's not just identity theft, it's literally like they got into my psyche, like that. Yeah. Victoria states recording dreams is crazy and scary. Yeah. So it really depends on the society, the culture, the company, or what is all packed around that for sure. I could definitely see it opening up in like medical field, like psychology and things like that, where there's a licensed professional and maybe a device that you have to be a certified licensed professional to even have that in your office. And then I think that's like an episode of Dark Mirror where you can see people's memories like that. But then you need that professional not only because they have the access to the device and everything, but they have the knowledge of not only how to properly place this without like causing you any damage, physical or emotional or mental, but also they can help you process that. Like it'd be a whole nother layer of like psychotherapy or therapy, counseling, and stuff like that. So that'd be very interesting. Um, but definitely it's also scary, but also scary on both ends. Not only as a person, like is it gonna be that just placed there and no one gets to see it ever, or does it get taken to another study, or does it get erased, or what? And same for the therapist, the professional. Depending on what trauma or what you're working through, you yourself may have to review those images too, so they could be pretty, you know, devastating to you on, I guess, on a human, emotional, mental level, but also maybe even a spiritual soul level, just things that you didn't necessarily want to encounter, but you're also called. Hopefully, it's not monetary. Hopefully, you're actually properly called, as in your soul, your emotions, your will is like, I want to help people in this regard, and I am capable of doing that. So yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground here, chat. So let's just do some Q&A of some fun dream questions. I think Victoria um, touched on this a little bit earlier, but have you ever had a dream that came true? And I think Danielle did too. So I think there is some consensus that we have had dreams come true. I personally have not had a literal dream come true in that regard. I definitely have dreams with people in it that I consider them more archetypes. I tend to not take my dreams in the literal sense anymore. Back in my young days, I may have thought of them as what Freud originally thought wish fulfillment and taken them as such, or even with a sprinkling of like the divine messaging. I think I told previous live how my husband, when I started dating my husband and stuff like that, throughout the years, I met him. We met each other in high school, so we were friends, but he moved away, all this stuff. And I kept having dreams every about 3 to 6 months of me either trying to call him, talk to him, or, speak to him in some sort. So it kept that tether alive. So like every 3 or 6 months, I would at least text him and be like, hey, how you doing? And then he would text me, oh, I'm doing good. How are you? Keeping that connection alive until eventually I think like a decade later, he moved actually officially back where I lived in the same town again. And then that's when it was like, oh, we are in a great spot to actually date. So not a literal dream come true, but definitely an interesting, I guess, soul connection or subconscious tether. That's a good way to see it. Um, what about another fun one? If you could ask your dreams one question tonight, like either you thinking you're talking to spirit, you're talking to God, the universe, your higher self, what have you, what would it be that you would ask? Like if you could actually ask a specific question, the message is received. If you want to share it, obviously this might be personal, but you could think about it too and just process it as your own reflection. But if you feel free to put it in the chat, um, I think I would like to know my life goal here. I think through my own journey so far, especially after having my daughter, as I explained before in a previous live, it kind of feels like I myself was born or reborn when she was born. Like there was a metamorphosis of sorts. And physically, for sure, I was probably at my weakest during and after childbirth, like even TMI, but when I gave birth, I call it was a 60-40 team effort because by the end of technically I had a very good birth. It was not too long. I think it was like active labor was only like 2.5 hours. And I think at the 3 hour mark, there was some concern because I had some, I don't know the term, but let's just say eye pressure vein issues. Um, that's the story for another day. But so my doctor had said at the active labor 3 hour mark, I'm not comfortable with you continuing pushing. So we will have to do like the emergency C-section. And now, not preferred, but at the 2.5 hour mark, my daughter was born, so at the active labor, so it's cool. But internally, as she was born, I felt her little feet kicking my rib. And so every time the contraction happened and I needed to push, I remember the doctors looking at me and also looking at the machine that they could see and were like, why is she not pushing it? And I was exhausted because I probably had like centimeters of muscle just around my body. Like we were mashed potatoes. We did not exercise during that time or very infrequently. We were just hanging out at home. So yeah. But I call it was 60-40, meaning she fought 60% of it to push on my rib. Once the contraction hit, she pushed, and then that's when I felt okay. Once I felt her push, it was me to push. That was my cue to push. So I was the 40%. It was I. I was the problem. But but if I could ask myself, I would probably consider it my higher self a question tonight. It'd probably be like, what is the life's purpose? What is the goal here? Because I've been going through this metamorphosis, probably going on 5 years now. I'm getting closer to something, but I guess the process is also the journey. Learning to enjoy the journey, and enjoy the journey, and just it's not about the goal. It's not about the end. It's about the journey. Um, so if I could ask my higher self one question during my dream tonight, I'd be like, what is the purpose of the goal? Like, even if I don't get to the goal, what is the purpose of the journey? Like, what's the trajectory that we're supposed to be doing here? So I think that'd be interesting. So, we have talked quite a bit, chat. So I think we are going to be winding this down now. Tonight we explore dreams through psychology, science, spirituality, and personal meaning. I think maybe this discussion may deserve a part two. So let me know either in the chat if you would enjoy a part two, maybe diving more into very much specific areas of dreams in the subconscious or even the soul. Let me know in the comments after the fact if you're watching this live or even the abridged. Let me know what sections or subsections you would be more interested in having discussion. But for you chat here, and also those maybe watching later in the comments, drop one word that sums up your current beliefs concerning that word, your current beliefs about dreams. Do they mean anything to you? Yes? No? Do you think they are just your mind processing, or do you think it's a little both? Let me know in the chat as I talk here. You think your dreams hold actual meaning? Do you think I personally do. I still believe my dreams hold actual personal meaning as well as possible higher source. Was it the unconscious consciousness? That's like the whole world kind of meaning things. Um, Definitely some soul work meaning. And then also, I think dreams also hold the work of just modern science aspect of your body does need rest. It does need to process a lot of stuff that it went through that day, and your brain needs to like clear out space and process that stuff. So if you loved tonight's chat just as much as I did, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you have not already, or if you still feel so inclined, as obviously subscribers really help me feel like, oh, we're talking, we have community, great. And join me next Tuesday for another mind/soul exploration. And I'll see you next time. Oh, Thursday. We have game night Thursday. We're doing a night in the woods. Again, a little spooky, but not scary. Just a little spooky, but not scary. I don't know if my adrenals can handle that. But 7 p.m. Pacific time to 9 p.m. will be game night on Thursday. So I hope you guys all had a lovely day. I hope you have a great tomorrow, and hopefully I'll see you Thursday.